strategy will help me identify, okay, where do I really need to develop significant capabilities and where can I just be good enough?
Where do you see entrepreneurs working more through when they're at the $1 to $2 million range?
But as you start to move into the scaling mode, right, it really is about how do I step out of that direct involvement with the customer and direct involvement with the problem and the product that I'm developing, and more about how do I put a team around me that can actually scale the business. You know, it was interesting to kind of that leading leaders, right? Like how you learn how to lead oftentimes is when you try to lead leaders, because they don't work for you, you don't pay them, right? Like you've got to figure out how to naturally lead in those situations. It took me a while to figure that one out. I was trying to do everything. For a couple of years there, I was like, I've got to do everything and let people just deliver.
Yeah.
And then at some point I was like, oh, I shouldn't be doing all this. You know, enjoy the process. You know, I work with a lot of founders that are very big on the goals. Like, I want to hit this money. I want to, get it. I was like, yeah, yes, but let's have fun, right? Let's enjoy it, right? Because if we spend all this time and don't enjoy it, then what's the point?
Welcome to The Show Goes On, a podcast about the people who keep businesses running behind the scenes. My name is Amir Nanatani, and today I'm joined by Bruce Eckfeldt. Bruce Eckfeldt is a strategic coach and scaling up expert who helps CEOs scale faster, align their teams, and increase valuation with less drama. A former Inc. 500 CEO, he brings deep experience in strategy, execution, and leadership development. Bruce also hosts From Angel to Exit, where he interviews founders and investors about growth and exit journeys. Bruce, thanks for being here today. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks, Amir. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So when people ask you what you do, how do you usually answer?
Well, I like to say on the surface, I help them with strategy and leadership development. Below the surface, I say I'm basically a therapist. But it's really working with those leaders and their teams on how we're going to win, right? And how do we make that happen?
That's true. Yeah. A lot of times it is being a therapist, because I feel like business leaders usually they know the answers and they kind of need a lot of nudges in the right direction to get it there.
Yeah. A lot of there's just a lot of changes that leaders need to make as they scale their business, right? Like running a business that's a couple million is really different than 20, 30 million is really different than 100 million. So there's a lot of things you need to do differently. There's a lot of things you need to let go of. A lot of transformation that happens, and so a lot of what I do is just kind of help them with those journeys.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting what you just said. Those are three very different inflection points: the $1 to $2 million range, 10 plus, and then $100 million plus. Mm-hmm. I want to work our way up that chain then.
Sure.
What do you think people are more focused on or should be focusing more on, knowing full well that it's different in every business? But where do you see entrepreneurs working more through when they're at the $1 to $2 million range?
Yeah, so I talk a lot about the transition from founder to CEO, and that's an evolutionary process that happens over time. But there are some key things that I'm looking for, and a lot of it is going from that kind of being very kind of product customer focused. I mean, a lot of time founders are, it's what they do in the beginning, right? They see the opportunity, they see the pain point, they see the problem, they see potential for a solution, they have an idea, they've got a concept, they're able to put that in the market, they're able to sell it. Right, they've got that kind of early traction, right? Like I've got the ability to actually generate value in some way, and then they can start to monetize that. But as you start to move into the scaling mode, right, it really is about how do I step out of that direct involvement with the customer and direct involvement with the problem and the product that I'm developing, and more about how do I put a team around me that can actually scale the business. And you really have to go from, direct kind of touch to indirectly working through your other leaders. And that's a journey. And we actually just did a LinkedIn Live on this. I think it was yesterday. Kind of the mindset shifts that you need to make, as well as the strategic shifts about how you operate and what you focus on. And going from that kind of practical, scrappy, how do I get clients? How do I get deals? How do I close deals? How do I get revenue? To much more about how do I create market, how do I create advantage, what's my growth plan, how do I develop talent, looking more strategically at processes, standardization, SOPs, that's all things you need to do over that journey. And different businesses and different situations need to do different parts of that at different times. But a good founder that moves into that role kind of figures out how they need to shift their work.
Yeah. Are they taking on a lot of that themselves? Or are they delegating that to their teams? What have you seen work well?
Yeah, so I mean, delegation is going to be key, and building out a leadership team is a key stage in that journey. It's a lot of what I end up doing with founders is helping them, either retool their leadership team or craft their leadership team if we don't have one yet. And there's both kind of looking at what what the business is going to need in terms of what are going to be the challenges, what is the expertise we need to bring in, what's the knowledge, what's the experience. So if we're going to move into a strong channel strategy and we need to build out a channel within the business, then we need people who actually know how to do that, has experience, can accelerate that process. But we also need to look at the leader and the founder and like, okay, what are the things we need to surround them with in terms of not only skills and experiences, but oftentimes, mindset, different behavioral profiles. If a founder is very risk seeking, maybe we need to bring in some people that are going to be a little more conservative and help balance that out. People that are focused more on innovation versus optimization of a business. Those are all kind of factors that go into what do we need to think about when designing a leadership team around a founder. I do a whole process of leadership team assessments, and a lot of what I'm looking at is what is the strategy, because different strategies need different leadership teams. So we want to make sure that we understand both the founder's strengths and weaknesses, blind spots, but also what is it we're trying to execute? Are we trying to grab more market share? Are we trying to standardize things? Are we looking at product innovation? Are we looking for customer insights? Those are going to require, slightly different kind of leadership capacities, and therefore we need to kind of use that to design the right leadership team. And then it evolves, right? Like I'm going to start with a VP of sales that's going to be able to do, certain types of sales to certain types of volumes. And then I might need to move into a real CRO role when, I'm hitting, 10, 15, 20 million, right? Those things are going to change. I'm going to slice those up into different domains and stuff. So there's several different factors. The point is, those are things you need to consider, but you need to be intentional about designing your leadership team.
Yeah, for sure. And you had mentioned, I think, some personality types while you were talking there, and you had mentioned before the call too that you're also, I don't know if you heard that thunder. That was pretty bad. I told you.
When the lights flicker, we'll know.
yeah, maybe. But you're a big predictive index guy. Personally, I'm a culture index guy. That's what our company runs on. But I know that there's some similarities and overlap. But I'm huge on that because I feel like if you can supplement yourself with the right team that accounts for some of your lack of traits, then it can really help. So how have you seen that work for founders, just using tools like Predictive Index or psychometric assessments?
Yeah, I think it's critical because I think we over-index on kind of skills and experience. And I always say all assessments are wrong. Some of them are useful, right? So it's really figuring out like where's the opportunity to develop some more insights and some more data points that I can use to triangulate, what do I actually need to bring in? What are my current strengths and weaknesses? And there's no good or bad in any of these assessments. It's just, it is what it is. And if you score really high on one index, like you want to think about, okay, what does that mean? Where are my blind spots? And what do I need to do to balance that out with my team, right? And it's always a little bit of a game because you don't want to be so different that you can't connect and you don't have any common points of, areas that you can focus around. That said, I don't want to surround myself with an echo chamber, right? If I just hire a whole bunch of people like me, right, that's not going to really help the organization, right? So I want to find those balances. That's why I kind of look at strategy, because strategy will help me identify, okay, where do I really need to develop significant capabilities and where can I just be good enough? And so using these tools, and there's dozens of them out there, and they're always kind of coming up with new ones, but tools that will give me insight around my behavioral tendencies and how I can assess other people on my team or people that I'm thinking about bringing on my team and understand where I'm going to have alignment, where I'm going to have potential friction, and where is it going to help support my creating a diverse team.
Yeah, for sure. And then I feel like sometimes you have the right person, but perhaps based on their personality assessment, they're just in the wrong seat. So just shifting them over into the right seat gets them into, their zone of genius, their area of genius.
Yeah. Rerolling is one of the sort of first things we look at when we've got a team that isn't performing well. It's like, do we have the right people in the right roles? The other one I find around that one is that I lost it. You were talking about the getting people in the right seats. So the behavioral profiles give me insights in terms of how people are going to behave, and so then we can look at what is the behavior we need on the team and how do we balance those things out. So yeah, it's subtle. Like I said, I think we over-index on experience a lot, and we really need to look at how are people showing up and what is the dynamic we're going to have on a team.
Yeah. So you guys are hiring when you're advising teams, you're looking more at personality and behavioral fit rather than just black and white skills?
Yeah, well, I find it's usually teams usually do a decent job of looking at skills and experience, right? Because it's easy to look at resumes. It's, particularly if you're working with recruiters and things like that, like it's easy to find people that are going to have the skills. It's harder to assess the behavioral profiles. And so I typically, focus on that side of the equation just because it's something that is not easy to do and can be pretty important. And having done that a lot, I can kind of tease out, okay, this is how I think this is really going to work out with you, given this person, even if they have perfect skills and, a great track record of doing this kind of work, knowing some of the subtleties, and particularly having worked with the founder for a while, like I have some nuance in terms of understanding their profiles.
Yeah. Before you start working with the team and you go into let's say a quarterly session with them for the day, do you do any pre-work with them just to kind of get up to speed on what they're all about?
Yeah. So I usually start clients with the 3-day strategy session. I have a whole kind of stack that I go through and helping them understand some of the foundations. Why are we here? What is the BHAG? What do we need to be in 3 years? And then I do a strategy component, which is, are we going to win the market, differentiators, competitive landscape, core customer? Then we build out a roadmap, 12-quarter plan for how we're going to execute. And so that 3-day session is a pretty intensive session where I get the leadership team together to make those hard decisions and put together a plan that drive quarterlies. Before that, I do behavioral profiles, and then I have a series of surveys that I do that get that information out, both around where they are in the market and where they see opportunity, as well as the internal team dynamics. And then I do one-on-one interviews with all the executives, and that's my chance to really kind of dig into that, understand what the problems are, surface some of the issues. So when I go into the sessions, I have a pretty good idea of where they are and where some of the challenges are and what we need to focus on. And I can kind of tune the actual work to kind of fit their situation and fit their challenges. So yeah, it's pretty critical. Like part of my job is to get issues on the table. Yeah. And sometimes that's a little difficult. I've got to dig and go down a couple of levels before it's like, yeah, I know you're saying this is an issue, but if we really dig, what is it? And usually it's some kind of interpersonal or kind of team dynamic thing that they've been struggling with. They haven't been able to get to real debate. We can't get to real commitment. We lack accountability. Like, I've got to dig into those things and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm sure some of it's pattern recognition. Like as you're doing all that pre-work, you start to notice certain things, inconsistencies that feed right into the issues list that you guys start creating.
Yeah. There's probably a book in there on, I came out of architecture and came out of technology. And there's a great book by Christopher Alexander called Pattern Languages. So it talks about patterns. And I think a lot of what I end up doing is noticing patterns, and I could probably do a leadership team pattern book some point here, because it is. Every business is different, but a lot of times you're seeing the same kind of fundamental dynamic on some of these teams.
Yeah, for sure. So you got your start in technology and architecture. I saw that. So talk to me about that. That's really unique that you started off in architecture.
Yeah, I was originally trained as a fine artist, and I was really good at math. So that kind of got me into architecture as being kind of this discipline that can combine both kind of creative design thinking with more kind of logical engineering, kind of calculating tasks. Did a couple of years in the profession and then got recruited to New York to work with interactive media. So I was doing a lot of computer modeling work, and that got me into kind of more of the interactive space. And then the internet space, I got more interested in kind of software development and kind of product design, digital product design, and then met a guy named Ivar Jakobsen, who was one of the three amigos originally in the technology world, created object-oriented programming, and he exposed me to all kind of software engineering and software methodology. Stumbled upon extreme programming in late 90s, early 2000s. And then we founded a tech company focused on lean agile software development. We did a lot of product development, legacy system migration, and then coaching of software teams. And so we scaled that company, and I sold it in 2013. And I've kind of moved into kind of advisory services and coaching. But it's always been, for me, complicated problems. How do we find elegant solutions? How do we see the patterns? How do we figure out what is our goal? How do we design something to kind of meet that goal? And so I've kind of shifted kind of the material that I work with, from going from kind of bricks and mortars to technology to people now. But the through line is all there in terms of, how do I really solve problems elegantly?
Yeah. You're in software at a very hot time. There's so much coming out during that time. So I don't know, take me back to when you were doing Cyrus. Like how was that?
Yeah. Well, it was one of those kind of accidental entrepreneur stories, right? Like I had an opportunity to do a project, so I had to hire a couple of people, and as we were working on that one, another project came up, so we hired a few more. So it was kind of this. At some point, we're like, oh my gosh, we got a company,
Yeah.
and it's going pretty well. And then it was like, oh my gosh, and then I had to figure out how to be a CEO, and a lot of the reason that I do the work that I do today is because I made all the mistakes that you can possibly make. I'm like,
Please learn
okay,
from
let's see
everything I did wrong.
yeah, exactly. Let's at least make different mistakes.
Yeah.
Let's not make the same mistakes. But it was fun. It was experience. I mean, it was dramatic. We had all sorts of kind of challenges. We had big clients that left, and we had to figure out how to navigate changing teams and changing people. Partnership issues. We had there's drama in business, but the thing I realize is what they teach you in school in leadership, right? Like if you go to business school and things like that, is there's a lot of academic, there's a lot of fundamentals, but there's very little practical experience that I think people have coming out of classical programs. So a lot of what I do today is actually work with people that were classically trained in business administration and things like that, but don't really have the practical leadership skills, particularly in this kind of sub $100 million kind of growth company phase. Yeah. And it's interesting, and it's interesting to see what you need to learn and kind of the skills and the tools and the mindset that you need to develop. It took me a little while to realize that, there are ways of doing these things. Like I tried to do it all myself in the beginning, and I joined EO. I worked with Vern. I had, I started reading things. I started, get the book. Like, there's actually ways to solve this stuff. And so that kind of got me really curious about kind of the designing of business and the growth of business that kind of put me into what I'm doing today.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like once you start running a business, if you can get very into the process of building the business, then it can become a good time, and you realize like, oh, wow, there's foundational tools that I can rely on that can help as we start scaling.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to find the next breakthrough, the next innovation. Generally, it's just one of the foundational principles that you're lacking in.
Yeah.
So
and teams.
Yeah, and teams. Building the right team is, I think that's everything, because if you got the right team, it makes your job a whole lot easier.
It took me a while to figure that one out. I was trying to do everything. For a couple of years there, I was like, I've got to do everything and let people just deliver. Yeah. And then at some point I was like, I shouldn't be doing all this.
Yeah, for sure. I also think like the longer you hang around, sometimes you just hit lightning in a bottle and you find the right person. Mm-hmm. And like, it just takes time sometimes to get to the right person. It takes several different iterations.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You got to cycle through sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. How was your experience in EO? I'm curious because I was like for like what 10 years that you're in EO?
Yeah, I was. It was great. I went to an event. I hit the Inc. 500 list. I think it was maybe the first time around, maybe the second time, and I got invited to an Inc. event downtown Manhattan at their headquarters at the time. And it was a EO. I didn't know exactly what it was at the time, but it was an EO intro event, and I met a guy named Matt Weiss, who was the chapter president at the time, and we did a mock forum experience, and that was just like so cool. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is really really neat. So I got into EO, did my forum, spent about first year just kind of did my forum experience, went to events and things like that, and then started getting involved in leadership. I got recruited to work with I think it was one of the learning chairs, and then I was learning chair, I was moderator chair, I was forum chair, I did I think maybe I did SAP for a year. I can't cycle through leadership. And then I did East Coast. I was both moderator and accelerator. I ran the accelerator program for New York. And then I ran East Coast and did a couple things with global. And, I learned pretty quickly. And people were pretty good about kind of nudging me in this, but particularly with EO, the more that you can get involved in leadership, the better your experience is going to be, the more impact you're going to have. So that was a lot. I was actually elected chapter president at one point. I decided not to do it for all sorts of reasons, but it was interesting to kind of that leading leaders, right? Like how you learn how to lead oftentimes is when you try to lead leaders, because they don't work for you. You don't pay them, right? Like you've got to figure out how to naturally lead in those situations. Learned a lot. My forum experience, obviously, I think most people come at a forum pretty transformed in terms of having that kind of support and insight, right? The feedback that you get from your forum is critical. I learned a lot about myself and my business and relationships, so like kind of really across the board. So, and I still work. I do a lot of EO and YPO retreat work. So it's fun to go in and work with forums and help them with their forum experience, with structure, with communication, planning. It's a core part of what I do today.
What's one of your favorite retreat experiences that you've done?
As a forum member or as a forum facilitator?
As a facilitator, I'm curious.
Oh, I just got back from Medellin, Colombia.
Oh, cool. Okay.
We did a couple of days at a nice private house there. And it was interesting. The forum's been together. They were actually a merger of two forums about a year ago. And it was like we cut pretty quickly to where they were having some challenges. And I always find forum is kind of this mix of energy, right? Like how do you create the right energy between people, but also structure and protocol. And I'm a big, right, protocol sets you free. Like if you've got good foundations about how you're going to meet, ground rules, agreements on how people show up and how you conduct yourselves, then it allows you to actually go much deeper. You're not constantly kind of worried about, okay, well, what time are we meeting? When is it meeting? Like, how do we run this meeting? Like, what do we agree on how we're going to do this thing? What's the presentation protocols, right? Like, if you can iron that stuff out, then you can actually get into the work itself. So I've done some fun ones like that. I'm a big outdoor adventure guy, so I do a lot of stuff with like climbing and hiking and skiing and backcountry and things. So I've been able to take a couple of forums out and kind of have some more adventuresome experiences. And I always find that, finding a little discomfort creates an opportunity for, personal exploration and team exploration to sort of see how people handle it, how do they conduct themselves, what changes with the kind of communication, and the debrief on that can be super powerful and see how people respond to that.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like when you're doing things that you normally wouldn't do, like risky activities, and even if it's like an ATV, something that knocks you out of your current state, it opens up the brain a little bit more, and then you're willing to share a little bit more openly, more vulnerable, and go even deeper into that 5% than before. Yeah, not just like a standard forum update then. Yeah.
Well, and that's the real opportunity with retreats, right? You actually have that time together, and you can have the deeper experiences. You can actually do something for a day or two. And I'm a big fan of renting houses and cohabitating, right? Where it's you have to literally live together for a couple of days, right? That breaks down a lot of barriers and gets rid of a lot of kind of facades for folks. So
yeah, for sure. Are you a big biker? I see the bike in the back.
I do. So I was a big triathlete and biker. That's my Tarmac 6. I keep that one up here. I have 4 more downstairs.
Oh wow!
But I broke my back about 7 years ago, and so I have a double fused lower lumbar now. It's all titanium, and so the bent over. I can't be in a narrow position for more than about an hour and a half before I'm just really uncomfortable. So that one doesn't get a lot of use these days. So, but
sorry to hear that. How did that happen?
It was probably a mountain biking accident from a couple of years before that, where the vertebrae fractured, but it all stayed together. And then one day it slipped. I couldn't feel my left leg, so we went in pretty quickly and did the upside was because it happened quickly. I was still in pretty good shape, and my recovery was pretty good. Now I have a full recovery. I'm squatting 250, and I can do all my exercise. Ironically, my golf game actually improved because I wasn't because my rotational range decreased, but it actually meant that I was sort of tighter with my swing and I wasn't over swinging as much. So my distance isn't as long, but I'm actually tighter on getting on the fairways. So there was some actually benefit to some of these things.
Nice. Is the only limitation is that you can't like sit still for too long?
I can. I stiffen up. I've had to really focus on mobility and stretching. I have a whole protocol that I do every evening just to keep all that loose. I'm probably in better shape now than I was then, just because I've had to focus on it so much more. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's all the benefits of being an athlete over the years. Like you just know your body, you know how to train it, you know how to push the edge. And honestly, it goes a lot with my coaching too, right? It's just kind of figuring out what is it we need to achieve, what is the protocol, what's the plan, what's the discipline, how do we kind of stay on that learning zone. Like we want to get out of our comfort zone. We don't want to be in panic zone, but we need to push it. Like change is only going to come through a certain amount of stress. So knowing how to kind of manage that and dial that in has been key.
For sure. So then you talked about that. You sold your company, and then I'm sure you're sitting there being like, okay, what's next? So
yeah. So yeah, it was. We had partnership disputes and everything. So the sale of my company was a little bit dramatic and not. It was planned, but it was not exactly, it wasn't the thing that I had planned 10 years before. So yeah, I was kind of in the situation, okay, well, we're out of this. I was in a little bit of an earnout. So I had some obligations to stay with things. But Yeah, it was kind of an existential, like, what do I do now? And I had a couple opportunities to go work with a couple different companies. I did some interim CEO roles. And then kind of coaching fell in my lap where a bunch of EO friends of mine were like, hey, can you come in and run the strategy session? Or I've got this department that we need to like really turn around, or I need a COO for a while. Can you come in and help me? And I started realizing that I could come into these situations and kind of size them up pretty quickly and figure out, okay, well, this is the problem. This is probably what we need to do. Here's how we work with the team. Within a couple of weeks, had to make some, really positive changes. But then I was like, okay, now I'm just working. And I was like, well, why don't I just go to another company and do this? Like, why should I stay here? And then I was like, oh, coaching is kind of interesting. It allows me to kind of go from company to company, create a lot of value quickly, and then let them execute. And then I can kind of take my learnings and apply it to the next situation.
Yeah.
So Vern kind of tapped me on the shoulder, and I had done lean agile coaching for years. So I was strong on the coaching side, and I knew the business tools because I'd used them on my business. So yeah, I started doing coaching with Scaling Up, and that took off pretty quickly. Like I had a pretty good group. The irony is all the scaling up coaches that I talked to beforehand said, yeah, you're going to fire all your clients in 2 years because you realize you need different ones. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to and sure enough, 2 years in, I was like, oh, I got to fire all these clients and find new ones. So you got to learn a little bit. But yeah, it's been interesting focusing on, to kind of double down on strategy. I find that that's the key decision you need to get right before you can then figure out people and process and all the cash. And then I've gotten a lot into exit prep. So the last couple of years, I've helped several groups through transactions and just with my own deal. There are things that I've realized you can do better and do differently. So I've got a book coming out called Springboard, which is really focused on thinking of your exit as a springboard, as a transition to the next thing. And the more we can figure out that next thing up front, understand, what are you going to do? What are the resources, the assets that you need beyond just financial? We can kind of reverse engineer that into your exit, and then we can figure out what kind of company we need to build. So a lot of what I'm doing today is helping founders with kind of really thinking through that process and that journey and making sure they're creating assets and really all the resources they need to be successful post-exit.
Okay. What's like a solid client for you on the scaling up side then? What's something that you're looking for to make sure that, hey, I'd be able to help this company?
Yeah, so at this point, I really target 10 to 50 million in revenue in these high growth spaces. I do a lot of work in tech, a lot of work in real estate, a lot of work in professional services, kind of areas that I have deep experience in, and I've got a lot of clients in. And it's really a lot of times it's founders, first time founders. Oftentimes they're quite technical. So I deal with folks that are very smart in very particular ways, and that help them be very successful up to this point. And oftentimes what they're struggling is leadership and strategy, figuring out how do I actually scale this thing. So they're 20 million. I'm not working with a $20 million company right now. They've got 400 people between the US and India. And, it's like, where do we go from here? Right. And they've done a great job of getting here. But as we look at it, there's some non-trivial structural changes we probably need to make. We're trying to rethinking how we approach the markets. We're trying to figure out how to be more strategic in terms of differentiation, and helping them kind of sort through those things. And then, we can plot 100 million, right? Like there's definitely a path here over the next couple of years to get there. And so, I always joke half my job is business model, half my job is therapy. But it's, like we can do the plans, and then we have to dig into, okay, what are all the things that are coming up that are getting in our way? What are the mindset shifts we need to make? What are the behavioral patterns you're on? What are the fears? What are you afraid of? How are you stepping in your own way, right? Like how do we sort of sort through all those things? But we need the plan, right? I find it's helpful to have that kind of vision, and then we can sort of sort through where the challenges are.
Yeah. Or who do we need on the team to help us get there as well as we're starting to scale? That must be exciting to be part of that journey where you're talking with a company and helping them get from 20 million to 100 million. I mean, that's a huge.
Yeah, I think my best scenario. I just had a session with them a couple of weeks ago. I started working with them 8 years ago. They were 40 people. They just finished Series D, 140 million. They've got almost 600 people now. Wow. I mean, they're going to go public. All right, and actually to work with the two founders are the same people that I worked with originally. They've cycled through a couple of leadership teams, but to actually work with the company for 7-8 years and actually see them go through all of those stages it's fascinating, right? It's like it's a mini series of of stories and drama and opportunities and wins and setbacks and lucky breaks, and it's fun.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a little bit of luck involved too.
Oh,
Sometimes,
I'd take luck over being smart or being pretty any day of the week.
oh, 1,000%. And I think I was talking about this before. Like you just hang around long enough, and eventually,
Yeah.
you're gonna catch a lucky break at some
Yeah.
point. And then
Yeah.
you do, and you seize on that, and then
Yeah. Being
just go
ready.
for it.
A
Yeah.
lot of it is just being ready when you have an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you said you're writing a book right now, or you already wrote it?
Yeah. So, the book is basically written. I'm going through some developmental editing. We're figuring out launch strategies and stuff. But it's a bit of a passion project. I started this probably about a year ago. And when I really started noticing a lot of the founders kind of just feeling like there's an over index on valuation, right? Like, everyone's talking about what's your multiple? What are you worth? And I get it. Obviously, that's important. But as I talk to more of these founders that have exited, like, anywhere from, ooh, yeah, I wish I would have done this differently, to, people with existential crises, right? Like they sell their companies and they're like, I don't know what to do. Even if they're sitting on, a boatload of money, right? They don't have purpose. They don't have a plan. They didn't anticipate all the changes that the exit was going to have for them. People stop picking up the phone, right? Like, you're no longer that important once you sell your company, and that can be crushing.
Yeah.
And so I just saw the need to really kind of think about the exits beyond just the valuation, in terms of what are you going to do, what resources do you need, and how do you structure an exit that's actually going to serve you. And I push back on a lot of earnouts and deferred payments and things like that. I generally suggest you take less money, but get it in cash up front, just because it's usually the opportunity cost that you lose. Like, okay, so you're going to get another 10% of valuation by staying in a 3-year earnout. But what could you do with those 3 years? Like, rather than staying in a company and just making a salary on that, go start another business, right? Like, and I think a lot of founders don't really think about that, and then set themselves up for, some pain and suffering post exit that could be avoided if we have a little bit more of a plan.
Yeah. That's interesting. So talk to me about that. When people are, exiting a company, I've heard this from a couple of my friends. Sometimes it's kind of a lonely thing, because
Ooh, yeah.
they were used to, being on that meeting, being on that huddle, and suddenly, like, it's just quiet. So what do people do?
Yeah, so I kind of break it into a couple buckets. The big one, there is the psychological emotional side, which is founders typically gain a lot of just purpose and ego and, like, sense of being and value from running their businesses, right? And being leaders, particularly being leaders in businesses that they founded. They're very connected, and so there is a whole transitional, even grieving process that happens selling a company, because you're no longer connected to it, and you are kind of sitting with yourself. And if you don't have a very good relationship with yourself, if you haven't thought about it, if you haven't cultivated that, it can be very difficult, right? You lose the sort of the emotional sense of purpose and drive, and why do I wake up in the morning, and kind of thinking about the future, and all these things are very tied up into the company. And then social networks, right? Like, people, like working, they spend a huge amount of time with the people in their businesses, right? So, even if it's not like friends, even you wouldn't consider them friends, it's a lot of social interaction that when you sell, and particularly if you sell and you leave and everyone else is staying, right? It is isolating, incredibly isolating. And unless you have a little bit of a plan and have built out a network. So, like, one of the things I do with founders is, we'll think a little bit about the strategy. What are they going to do next? Are they going to start another business? Is there, some other, passion project or mission-driven project they're going to do? Are they going to become investors? Like, once we figure that out, we'll do a social network analysis. So we'll go through their current network and figure out, okay, out of all the people they know right now, who do they need to maintain, right? Who are the people that are going to serve them well in the next phase? Who do they not need to maintain? Who is not going to serve them well? They don't need to kind of worry about, or they can shed those people. And then what are the ones that we need to build before you exit that is going to serve you well? So we put together a 2 or 3 year plan of how to build up a professional personal network while you're still founder CEO in the business, while people pick up the phone when you call.
Yeah.
So that post exit, you've got, those relationships, you've got those connections that will allow you to springboard into that next phase. So some of it is super practical. Sometimes we're actually looking at the nature of the business and what kind of exit we're going to have. And maybe you want to retain some IP, right? So maybe there's some things that the business currently has that the buyer may not really care about that you could leverage into another business, or you could do something with. Work that into the deal, even if you have to pay for it a little bit. it gives you something. It gives you then something you can take on next. I've even seen founders that, carve out a division or something. They take, one particular market, or they take the high end of the market, or maybe the low end of a market, and they'll say, okay, well, I'm going to keep doing this. And great, okay. The buyer really only wants this high end anyway, so let's leverage it. I've seen a couple of cases where founders have sold to a company, spun off a company, and then sold that company back to the same buyer.
Oh, wow.
Just because they, you already have the relationship, they know what they want, right? And they can just, do a double sell at the end. So I'm a big fan of really thinking strategically about this. Both on the emotional side, like making sure that they've got, the right support structure, and they've got a sense of themselves separate from the company that is going to sustain, but also strategically, where are the opportunities to build other businesses?
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like a lot of it is just like pre-planning and looking ahead of time as far as like what needs to happen.
Yeah. And spending the time. I like doing it in kind of retreat format and stuff, because most founders, they're so overwhelmed with their businesses. Like, you kind of have to take them and say, okay, we're going to take 2 days. We're just going to focus on that, and then you go back to your business and you do your work. But you've got at least the beginnings of the plan.
Yeah, for sure. Are most of your clients like in that EO, YPO world, or a lot of them just like fresh out?
So it ranges. I would say 80% of my clients are in the 20 to 100 million range right now. I've got a couple of clients I've got one that's 800 million in revenues. Actually, I've got 2 that are kind of over 500 million in revenue right now. I work a couple of divisions of Fortune 500 companies, kind of spin-offs and divisions that kind of run entrepreneurially. So I do strategic work for them. And then I've got a couple of earlier stage founders that I just do CEO coaching with. Usually they've got significant opportunity, and we're kind of, they come to me early and it's like, hey, I know I need to build out a leadership team in the next year or 2. Let's start working together, and then you can help me craft that when I get there. So, and that's great, because then I can work with them earlier, and we're not cleaning up. Sometimes I'm getting in situations that they have a leadership team, and we're like, oh, okay, we need a little bit of we got a 6 to 12 month transition plan here that we need to start working on. But
do you feel like that happens, like and this may be a dumb question, but as your revenues start growing, do you see a lot of leadership team turnover, or do you see some teams have that stability even as they're rising through the revenues?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how we're scaling the revenues. If there's some businesses that can scale revenues without really changing the operational structure and kind of the leadership requirements a whole lot. But usually there's some amount of, we're having to level up the business, we're having to level up leadership team. And I usually have a conversation with the leadership teams that I'm working with. And I say, look, in order to scale the business, we're going to have to scale the leadership here, and which is going to put a lot of pressure on you individually to grow and evolve as leaders. And basically the process is either, as the company demands come up and the leadership demands increase, you're going to need to step up. And if you can't step up, then we're going to have to hire people over you, right? So you may be, head of technology, or you may be the, senior IT person in the company right now. But if we can't move you into a CTO role in the next 12, 24 months, we may have to hire a CTO to come in, and you're going to report into them. And it doesn't mean that we have to exit you from the company. It just means that we need to continue to scale leadership, and you may not have that leadership role at the next phase of the company. So I try to be upfront with that, and we try to have open conversation around that and what that look like. And it's interesting. Some leaders are like, yeah, I want to do it. Like, put me in coach, like teach me, tell me how to level up. The other people are like, yeah, that's fine. Right. I like doing what I'm doing. And if we bring in a CTO, I'd be happy to go work for the CTO. So I think it's just having an open conversation around it and understanding where people are. And honestly, it happens with the founders too. I've had several cases where founders have chosen not to continue to have the head of company role. And we move them into, a CTO or product development or head of sales, because that's what they love doing. And we bring in professional management.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know a ton of my founder friends who are like, yes, I do not want to be CEO. That's good. Like I will gladly pass that on if I need to.
Yeah. Particularly when you get boards. If you got investors and you've got boards and things like that. I mean, that's managing boards and doing all that stuff it's a whole different world. And some founders really want to do it, and they figure it out and they get really good at it. Some founders are like, hire somebody else. I don't want to have to manage a board.
Yeah.
So which is fun. And it is good. It's good to be open and honest about that and make those decisions early.
For sure. I feel like you're in such a unique position as that coach, as like that outside but still internal person who can come in and have those frank conversations with everyone that generally, like, I feel like a lot of founders want to have, but they kind of need someone to help them out with that.
Yeah. Part of my job.
So I mean, I saw you got big into the podcast game as well. Do you have your own podcast? Tell me about that.
Well, so yeah, so this is the fourth podcast I've done.
Okay, cool.
I think I've done. We counted almost 1,000 episodes between all the podcasts that I've done over the last years.
Wow, you've done over 1,000 episodes?
Yeah, so I did. So I started with two 8 years ago. One called Scaling Up Services because I was doing a lot of service work. So we did service-based businesses, and we did several hundred episodes on that. The other one, I got involved in cannabis. So as part of when I broke my back, a bunch of my entrepreneurial friends gave me bags of edibles, and they were like, "Oh, you should use edibles." So within a couple of weeks, I was off edibles because I was using cannabis, and then I was sleeping like a baby, and it was fascinating. And so I started really getting into the space. I started working with a couple of companies, and I was like, I need to learn more. I need to build a network. So we started a podcast to really just be able to kind of understand the space, cover the industry, and to expand my network. And so we did several, and we probably did 600 episodes on that one over the years, where I just interviewed founders and kind of experts in the cannabis space. And it was fascinating. It was just because I was hitting at an early stage, and pretty much anyone would talk to me. But then as it got bigger, as the podcast bigger, as cannabis got bigger, it was great. Podcasts are great. Like I could pretty much call any CEO in the cannabis space and they'd be willing to do an episode. All right. So it became this great way of just networking and prospecting and being an expert. And then I became a little bit of a maven where I was like introducing people, and I could go to a cannabis industry conference and most people have heard the podcast. And so it was a great way to just build a reputation around it and stuff. Fortunately, cannabis hasn't done very well over the last couple of years, but yeah, it was. I realized I like the interviewing. I like the process. It's great content. And if you can figure out how to kind of leverage it as both a networking tool and a content marketing tool, I think it's a great format.
Yeah, for sure. What's been going on in the cannabis space the past couple of years? I have no idea.
Well, so the big issue, we did not get federal legalization. So there's a couple of attempts, and so cannabis is still federally legal, which causes a problem because you can't have interstate commerce. So you can't transport cannabis across state lines, which fundamentally means you basically have, I don't even know how many states are legal now, but like 38 mini markets of cannabis. And so as cannabis retailer, or as cannabis people in the cannabis industry, like whether you're a cultivator, a processor, or a retailer, right, you can only operate within that state with your, you can't move product between state lines. So you get, like, if you have a package design or something like that, you can ship all that stuff, but you can't have it full, right? Like you can't move things. So it just creates this really inefficient market. Well, now the problem is that it's been so much invested in these local markets, and these states have issued these licenses, and people have been, invested in facilities and all these kind of things. Even if we go federally legal, it's not like you're going to open up this completely fluid federal market, right? You're going to have states that would start putting taxes in. It's like out-of-state cannabis gets a 20% tax, because we have to protect our local license holders, because otherwise, like, what are we going to do? We just charge them hundreds of thousands of dollars to have a license, and now California weed floods, right? So
yeah,
it just creates this super inefficient and complicated industry, which just puts all sorts of a pressure on them not to grow. The other problem is because it's not federally legal, these markets go through these cycles. Well, you have these businesses failing. Well, you can't use federal bankruptcy courts. So now you have these assets, inside these companies that go into receivership. And, there's still companies that have been years of assets tied up in litigation around how to distribute these assets, right? Because there's assets there, and you could distribute at least some value back to shareholders and stuff like that, but they can't, because all the shareholders get together. I mean, you just don't have the efficiency of being able to unwind these companies and redeploy assets and create it. So it just puts a big wet blanket on the entire industry. So you have some states that are doing well, a lot of states that are really struggling, and you're always competing against the black market and the gray market, right? Like, California weeds everywhere, right? On a black market basis. And that hits all the other markets, right? So even though you can't cross state lines legally, California market goes down, they just ship all the weed to other states, and now it hurts those markets. And so as a cannabis owner, a cannabis company owner, it's just a horrible business to be in right now. So
yeah, that sounds like a cluster. There's
it is a total
going
cluster.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the real solution, I don't know, they've got to federally legalize it. It's going to take about a decade for all these kind of state level things to unwind. We'll see. I mean, there's various models of kind of going with a liquor distributor model in some states. It kind of works, kind of doesn't. But yeah, there's a lot of just sorting out and stuff. It's gonna take a while before that market is super mature.
Yeah, very interesting. And
yeah,
you got unique insight on it because you've talked to all these guys now. So
honestly, it's one of the things I love about what I do because I get to go into these. The other week, I was in a company that does space satellite communications for the military. It's like okay, I get to learn all about how that industry works and all of the dynamics and who's who, and it's just fun. It's fun doing that as a coach.
It's a great way for adults to keep learning.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Cool. So we can wrap up, and I want to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Before we get finished, but favorite book?
The Goal by Eli Goldratt. Oh, business book. I would say business book. Eli Goldratt. Yeah. So The Goal by Eli Goldratt. I would say it's one of my you have to read if you're going to work with me. I would say The Alchemist if we're doing more just. general.
I love The Alchemist.
That's one of my more general life books. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just sending someone a quote the other day as like when the universe conspires or something, right? It will fall in your favor. Yeah, I forget something of that sort. Yeah. Basically, you can bend the universe to your will.
Yeah. Exactly. Everything is manifestation. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Favorite city that you can travel to whenever?
Well, Montreal is kind of my go-to. I went to school there, and it's cool. From this little gem of Europe in North America. I love the culture. I love the city. I love the environment there. Outside of that, I don't know. Stockholm. I really like Stockholm. Cool. I like it in like June. I don't like it in November. But
Stockholm in June. Okay. That's good to know. I always say New York, but like you're a New York guy, so like you get this all the time. So
yeah. Place I would want to go other than New York. Yes.
Yeah, I know. And then favorite movie or TV show right now?
So I'm watching Slow Horses. It was a slow start, but I've gotten into it and I've really liked it. Finished the Diplomat series, which I liked a lot. I'm trying to think what else is on my Chief of War.
Man, I haven't heard of any of these. Slow Horses, Diplomat, and Chief of War.
Yeah, so Chief of War is Jason Momoa. It's a whole about Hawaiian Islands, the colonization of the Hawaiian Islands. Fascinating, very well shot. It's very intense. Diplomat is kind of a political intrigue, a little bit of spy stuff. I think they've got 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons. And then Slow Horses is espionage, British intelligence, MI5 kind of stuff based in London, but it's Gary Oldman.
Nice. Oh, okay. I've heard of that one. Yeah, the Gary Oldman one. Yeah. That's gotten like great awards and everything too.
Oh yeah, it's won very well. Like I said, I watched an episode and I was like, I don't like this, and then I won all the awards. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So I gave it a few more. And now I'm kind of into it. I'm done with season 1, so nice. I'm in season 2 right now.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Well, thanks so much, man. I really appreciated you. And before we sign off, like any final takeaways for everyone?
No, I just think, life is a journey. The process is, enjoy the process. I work with a lot of founders that are very big on the goals. Like, I want to hit this money. I want to, I'm like, yes, but let's have fun, right? Let's enjoy it, right? Because if we spend all this time and don't enjoy it, then what's the point? So
right. Then you get there and you're like, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks so much, man. And where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so easiest way, just bruce@eckfeldt.com is my email address. Eckfeldt.com is my website. And then LinkedIn. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. So just Beckfeldt, BECKFELDT on LinkedIn.
All right, cool. Thanks so much, Bruce. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.